The coral reefs are precious. Along with the rainforests, they are the planet's richest ecosystems. But they are in danger. Under pressure from climate change and pollution. The corals form the basis of the reef. These creatures are astonishing in the diversity of their forms and distribution. Their structure provides refuge for a multitude of species. They are very well documented, down to a depth of 30 meters. Beyond that, in the twilight zones that scientists call the mesophotic zone, little is known. Ghislain and Emmanuelle sailed to the Crio at the end of Obonohu Bay. The Crio is a research center for coral ecosystems, where Laetitia Hédoin works.
This is the whole aquaology zone where we can keep the corals alive. There's some here and behind. It's a new platform. Then we've got some small containers. We can modify the environmental conditions like the pH and temperature.
When she arrived in Moria in 2010, the reefs were in a terrible state. There were practically no corals left. But just 8 years later, they've made a major comeback. Laetitia wonders if the crepuscular corals were behind this recovery. The Deep Hope program, based on the theory of refuge, came into being.
What we found so inspiring about your project is the refuge theory and the solutions which this could bring to the coral reef.
The refuge theory is the idea that the deep corals could generate larvae which come up to recolonize the surface. And if that's the case, it's extremely important for their protection, where the depth is really a critical dimension, which should be incorporated in studies, in management, in preservation. But we here in French Polynesia, we don't know because we don't have access to that zone.
It's amazing to think that for the first time in French Polynesia, we're going to observe and take samples on a vast scale of species and individuals that we don't yet know. We're going to try and understand how they live and how they interact. It's going to be like our own Cousteau dream.
This collaboration is a golden opportunity. At the start of the expedition, Laetitia guides them into the coral world. Michel Pichon, global specialist in coral identification, accompanies them. Today's agenda, a dive to 120 meters on a site at Moria that the Crio has been studying.
We're quite familiar with the zone from 0 to 30 meters, since that's the zone we study. Beyond that, it's true it becomes a bit more vague. But Michel has made this little sheet on which he's noted the main species we expect to find down there. What's the maximum dive time at 90 and 120 meters?
At 120 meters, that gives us 3 hours diving, 3.5 hours. We'll be in that ballpark.
20 or 25 minutes, that's not quite the same dive time. At 120 meters, each minute will significantly increase the decompression time.
And that includes the descent too.
If there's any snag to deal with when you're down there, 3 minutes more is 45 minutes extra decompression. It starts to add up. 1 hour's decompression for 4 minutes.
Every minute spent at depth has a cost in terms of decompression time. The divers then have to spend several hours underwater. Marine biologist Julien Leblanc is Ghislain's diving partner. Together, they share the same risks. For this initial dive, Ghislain is hooked up to Laetitia Hédoin and Michel Pichon via a camera. They want to see the coral species living in this crepuscular world and see how abundant they are. They each have 80 kilos of equipment, a rebreather, 4 bottles on their backs, 2 big ones on the side, lighting, tools, the propulsion scooter. Going down 120 meters is an exercise in itself.
8.64, 200 bars, inject.
190 bars, inject.
Intermediary, 2040, 250 bars, closed under pressure.
270 bars, regulator working, open under pressure.
La descente, on essaie de la faire la plus rapide.
We try to descend as quickly as possible.
On arrive à 40
We get
mètres.
to 40 meters.
Il y a beaucoup de poissons.
There are a lot of fish.
Le ville sous-marine.
There's a genuine underwater city living in and around the corals.
Puis en quelques minutes,
In a few minutes,
on va changer de
we'll
monde.
change universe.
C'est des
It's an
sensations
extraordinary sensation.
extraordinaires. La lumière
The light
diminue,
dims, the gloom grows,
J'ai tous mes
all my
sens
senses
éveillés.
are on alert.
J'ai une partie de moi-même basée
There's a
sur
part of me based on the automatic reflexes of diving and survival in the deep.
l'équilibre, la
Equilibrium,
respiration.
breathing.
J'ai toujours un
I
regard.
always keep one eye over my shoulder to check there are no sharks around.
Dans les parages. J'ai toujours un œil.
I always keep an eye on Julien, and I know he's keeping an eye on me.
Que le temps est compté.
The clock is ticking.
On a quelques
We have a few minutes to make this trip and bring back these corals from the
et
depths.
ramener de ces profondeurs ces coraux qu'on est venu chercher.
Ghislain and Julien move along the drop. At 120 meters on this site, there is no coral. But in the zone around 90 meters, they are present. The coral covering is even quite significant for this depth. Certain corals attract their attention.
I find it quite unique to discover this at the same time with him, seeing him underwater, sharing this. I would never go down to 120 meters, and to do this with him is an experience. We can see that they've come up a bit, but we can see that there's quite a bit of life at this depth. We should tell him to take that acropora.
Ghislain, if you're receiving me, take the acropora just above.
They send their samples back to the surface. Now it's time to resurface. And that means a long wait, around 2.5 hours of decompression, to reduce the nitrogen or helium accumulated in the body and avoid an accident.
Quand on fait de la plongée profonde,
When you make a deep dive, you have a limit.
attends la profondeur.
It's not so much the depth, it's the time.
C'est pas la machine.
It's not the machine which limits us, it's the person.
C'est l'homme. C'est le froid.
It's the cold,
C'est la
the
fatigue.
fatigue.
Et ici, à 6
And at the
mètres,
stop
on peut
here
aller-
at 6 meters,
on y est presque.
we're nearly
La surface,
there.
elle est là, on la
The
voit.
surface is right there,
On est
and we
4
can see
mètres
it.
de la surface.
And yet we're 6 meters
On est en
down,
fait-
and it's been several hours,
Et ça, c'est
and there's no way around it.
infranchissable.
On the surface, the scientists wait patiently for the divers. Meanwhile, one of the samples brought up from the deep has especially attracted their attention. A coral of the genus Pachyceras, found at 90 meters.
This is the Pachyceras from 90 meters. We think this is a record in terms of depth for a Pachyceras. Do you know if you saw a lot of them at that depth?
Well, it was at the start, but yes, there were loads. They appear all at once. We were going along the bank and boom! At 90 meters, we saw the first, we took it, and then we looked around, and they were all around. And there were other colonies, and there were others which were even more extensive than that.
For us, knowing this exists at 90 meters suggests it might serve to recolonize shallower areas.
This is a major discovery. It tends to support the refuge theory, the idea that deep corals might reseed the surface of the reef. The boat leaves Moorea. It sails through the Society Islands. 3 islands will be explored in each Polynesian archipelago. 2 sites are selected on each island, with 6 dives on each site. This is a sizable undertaking, involving at least 6 divers every time. They divide up the different depths, from 6 meters to 120 meters. They collect samples. They photograph the deep coral colonies to record their diversity and their quantity. They also install luminosity and temperature sensors to understand the physical characteristics of this twilight world. Each dive is a journey of wonder.
We move through these environments and we know things are going to happen. I know I'm going to make different observations every time.
Qui sont à chaque fois différentes.
The boat becomes a laboratory. The samples accumulate on deck as a hidden world starts to reveal itself.
The first samples gathered are always a surprise when we open the sachets, when we finally see what they've collected. We have lots of discoveries, seeing all these previously unknown species which managed to colonize this little-known mesophotic zone.
And the biggest surprise so far goes by the name of sample number 805, a coral never previously observed in Polynesia or elsewhere. Amazingly, the divers frequently collect this unrecorded species of coral in the twilight zone. Michel spends endless hours studying them. He identifies the genus, but not the species. And it's such a rare genus, he can't believe it.
Is this a totally new species?
Absolutely.
Is that an incredible discovery?
Yes. It's one of the highlights of the expedition. A pearl of our own. It's totally amazing and unexpected to find something like that in Polynesia to begin with. Honestly, I can tell you I wasn't expecting that.